That was great. But I didn't see any diamonds in there.
You're right. There weren't any. But this stone in my ring is a gemstone. It's called a ruby.
Wow, it's beautiful. Where do gemstones come from?
Rubies, like all rocks and minerals, come from the earth. Some rocks are formed inside the earth, in the crust or mantle. Some are formed at or near the earth's surface.
What do you mean formed? I thought rocks were just sort of always here.
Actually, Marquis, it usually takes nature thousands or even millions of years to make a rock. Rocks are formed in 3 different ways, and they are classified by the way they were formed.
Deep inside the earth, the temperatures are so hot that the minerals actually become melted, or molten rock. This melted rock is called magma. The type of rock that is formed when the magma cools and hardens is called igneous rock. Igneous means fire. Magma that reaches the Earth's surface from a volcano is called lava. When lava cools and hardens, it becomes extrusive igneous rock. X means out. Extrusive rocks cool on the outside of the Earth's surface. They cool rapidly, allowing only small mineral crystals to form.
Let me show you more. Basalt is an example of an extrusive igneous rock. It has small crystals and a fine texture.
Magma that becomes trapped, then cools and hardens before it reaches the surface is called intrusive igneous rock.
In, as in, inside the earth?
Right, Marquis. It cools very slowly, allowing large crystals to form. Granite is an intrusive igneous rock. Notice that the crystals are large enough to see the different minerals.
The second type of rock is a sedimentary rock.
You may have noticed little bits of rock being washed into streams and rivers when it rains. These little bits, called sediment, are washed into lakes or the ocean and sink to the bottom. Layer upon layer of sediment pile on top of each other. The lower layers are under great pressure from the top layers and are eventually pressed together to create solid rocks. Rocks created this way are called sedimentary rocks. Sedimentary means made by settling down.
The actual type of rock formed depends on the type of sediment.
Some sedimentary rocks are formed from bits of other rocks. Some are formed from bits that were once part of living things. Shale is actually composed of mud and clay that has collected underwater. Sandstone is a very soft sedimentary rock that breaks easily. When you break a piece off, you can feel the grains of sand that make up sandstone. It's also very rough. You can see the layers that were pressed together over the years. As sedimentary rock is forming, tiny plant and animal remains may be trapped between the layers. When the remains decay, they leave impressions in the rocks called fossils. Can you see the shark's tooth? Another way sedimentary rocks are formed is from minerals that dissolve in water. Over time, after the water evaporates, just the mineral crystals are left behind as sediment. Limestone is formed this way. Halite, the mineral we know as salt, is formed this way too. Halite is mined in areas that were once covered with salt water. The third type of rock is metamorphic rock. Metamorphic means to change. Rocks deep in the earth may actually become other kinds of rocks due to tremendous heat and intense pressure. Hot magma rising through the Earth's crust comes in contact with other rocks and causes them to heat up. This can change the structure and texture of the rock and change it into a different kind of rock. Most metamorphic rocks form from the movement of the Earth's plates. Plates that collide can cause rocks to crush together, creating tremendous pressure. This pressure can make the rock become more compact and change into a different kind of rock. So you see, Marquis, any kind of rocks can be changed into metamorphic rocks. Limestone, when squeezed and heated, can become marble. Sandstone can become quartzite. Shale, under great pressure, can become slate. And granite can become gneiss.
So all the rocks in your rock kit are either igneous, sedimentary, or metamorphic?
Absolutely. Take it away, guys.
I'm igneous, melted rock made me. I'm sedimentary, for my layers you see. I'm metamorphic, I was once igneous, but sedimentary. But great pressure and heat finally changed me.
Marquis, see if you could tell me what the difference is between this rock and that one.
That's not a rock, that's a mountain.
You're right. It is a mountain. But it's a mountain made of granite, which is a rock.
And this is a granite rock.
So I guess the difference is the size.
Exactly right. Even though this rock is much smaller, it has the exact same ingredients. It's possible that at one time this rock was part of a much larger rock like that mountain.
So nature can change the size of rocks?
That's right. Over the centuries, rocks are exposed to wind, rain, snow, ice, and other forces of nature. When water seeps into a crack in a rock and freezes, the ice expands, increasing the size of the crack. This process, repeated year after year, eventually breaks rocks into smaller pieces. Plants can also break a rock. A root may extend down into a crack. As the root grows, it can break the rock apart.
This process of big rocks being broken into little rocks by nature and weather is called weathering. Chemicals can also weather rocks.
When water and CO2 from the air mix, they form a weak acid. This acid dissolves limestone and sometimes forms caves in the rocks. While weathering breaks down the rocks, it is erosion that moves them. We've talked about how rivers and streams can move sediment into lakes or the ocean. There are other ways that rocks are moved. Waves at the ocean are so powerful, they are constantly eroding rocky cliffs. Winds can move tons of dirt during a dust or sandstorm, and glaciers are even more powerful. A valley glacier is like a river of ice found only in the highest snowy mountains. A valley glacier can be 1,000 feet thick. And even though glaciers move very slowly, they have the power to break off and drag a boulder the size of a house. The final stage of movement is called deposition. When wind and water finally calm, the rocks and the sediment settle to the bottom. They are deposited in different areas. We saw deposition in the formation of sedimentary rock.
Would you believe that I could change a sedimentary rock into an igneous rock?
Not really.
You're right. I can't. But nature can. For over a period of thousands or even millions of years, forces of nature can change one kind of rock into another kind of rock.
This process is called the rock cycle. A cycle is something that happens over and over again. It doesn't have a real beginning or ending. As we already know, igneous rock is formed when hot magma that comes from inside the earth cools and hardens into rock. Eventually, weathering will break the igneous rock into those tiny little pieces called sediment. And sediment...
Wait, I know. Erosion carries the sediment into lakes and oceans where it sinks to the bottom. Layers of sediment press upon other layers of sediment until finally a sedimentary rock like sandstone is created.
Very good, Marquis. When sedimentary rocks become exposed on the surface of the earth, weathering and erosion can start the cycle over again, and new sedimentary rocks are formed from old. Or, instead of becoming exposed, the sedimentary rock can become buried in the earth where heat and pressure can change it into a metamorphic rock like quartzite. Or, the sedimentary rock could become completely melted.
So, when it moves up towards the surface and cools, it would become igneous rock, right?
I think you've got it. Care to give another example?
Well, that igneous rock could be pushed back down into the earth. Then, with enough pressure and heat, it could be changed into a metamorphic rock.
And I suppose if it got hot enough, the old igneous rock could actually be melted and changed into a new igneous rock.
Hey, this is fun.
Now, if that metamorphic rock comes to the surface,
Through weather and erosion, it could eventually become sedimentary rock.
But what would happen if that metamorphic rock stayed under the surface?
Well, if there was enough pressure and if it got hot enough, it could be changed into another kind of metamorphic rock. Or if it got really hot and melted into magma and then erupted like a volcano, it would become igneous rock when it cooled and hardened.
So what has the rock cycle taught you, Marquis?
Rocks are continually changing, and igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic rocks can all become each other. But that usually takes thousands or even millions of years.
So, Marquis, are you ready for a trip to the center of the Earth?
I think I'll pass, Uncle Bob. It's more than 6,000 degrees down there. But I might start collecting rocks.
Just rocks? Not minerals?
Well, you can't really collect rocks without collecting minerals, since minerals are the material rocks are made out of. It would be interesting to look at some of their properties, their color, luster, cleavage, and hardness, and categorize them into 3 groups. Igneous, rocks that were first molten magma deep inside the earth. Sedimentary, rocks that were formed from layers of sediment being squeezed together over the years. And metamorphic, sedimentary or igneous rocks that were changed by heat and pressure.
Of course, that could all be changed.
I know. Through the rock cycle, each of the 3 types of rocks can become any of the other types of rocks, but that usually takes thousands or even millions of years. That's a long time.
Speaking of time, when are you going to have enough information to write that report of yours?
You know, Uncle Bob, I think I've got plenty.
Marquis, you found plenty of what?
Oh, Uncle Bob was just... Uncle Bob?
Oh, I see. You found your Uncle Bob's rock kit.
Yeah. That's a metamorphic rock. It forms when pressure from the Earth's plates crush it. And this is a sedimentary rock. And this is granite.